All right, is everybody ready? Okay, here we go again. And right now, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome to the sofa up here a real legend in music and somebody who's influenced me personally in my musical taste in a really great way, Mr. Red Alert.
Peace, everybody. All right.
Now, just to give you some background, to take it back to, let me see, the late 80s, there used to be two main radio stations in New York, WBLS and KISS FM. And there were, Friday and Saturday nights, there were some amazing landmark radio shows that were going on there. I'm talking about live DJing, hearing records cut up on the air, hearing special skits and rhymes that were made specifically for those shows. And on KISS FM, you had Kool DJ Red Alert. On WBLS, there was Marley Marl. And these shows were so important and so hot to us at the time in New York City that I used to have a tape in, and I would literally, you could hear on my tapes when I was recording, when it would be coming to a commercial on Red's show, I would tune the fader up to BLS and try and catch a little bit of Mr. Magic's show, and then tune it back down, because you didn't want to miss a second, because there was always something happening, and it really set a high standard for what radio could be about for me. And I've been very fortunate to have the chance to see Red play, DJ with him several times, and he is always dropping knowledge, whether it's in the records that he plays or stories back then. So if you have an interest in how hip-hop got started and what it's really all about, then I think you'll be interested in what this guy has to say right here. So I'd like to start it off by taking it back to where you're from, the Bronx, and letting people know about that.
I'm originally, first I was born in Antigua, West Indies.
Okay.
I came over as a baby and was raised under my grandparents. My grandparents is from Antigua on my mother's side, and I grew up in Harlem. There's a project called, which is now called the Ralph J. Rangel Houses, originally known as Colonial Projects, right behind the Polo Grounds. I have no shame to tell you how far back it goes. At the time I was a tot, the Polo Grounds was a baseball field that originally the New York Giants was there. And then they moved out to San Francisco, and that's when they formed the New York Mets. As I was a tot, my grandfather, God bless him, he used to take me on the roof of the project, and we could look straight down and see the baseball game. But during the time coming up under my grandparents, in the household was the sounds of calypso, soca, right along with American music. At that time was the Motown, the old soul classics with some pop hits, the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Beach Boys, list is long over from around the 60s. I did not really acknowledge the outskirts of everything else until I got into like junior high school. And when I got into junior high school, I started to be aware of a lot of other different creations that was going on. Because when you're being raised in a household, the Caribbean household, you're not aware of the difference. When I started having friends, the funny part about it, when I started having friends, I remember when they used to start coming over to my house and they hear my grandparents speak, they say, "Oh, your grandmother from Jamaica?" "So you talking about? My grandmother from here." I did not understand. I thought they were making fun. Then when they saw the kind of food that we was eating, oh, y'all eat Jamaican food. I said, no, food is food. But, you know, it was like, you know, you start understanding later on. Now, after junior high school, I went to school in the Bronx. I went to DeWitt Clinton High School. As I went to DeWitt Clinton High School, that's when I started acknowledging a lot of other things. During that time, there was the gangs going on in the streets. There was the gangs such as the Black Spades, Savage Nomads, Savage Skulls, the list is long. And by me going to DeWitt Clinton, it was an all-boys school. So can you imagine about a school that averaged about 3,000 to 4,000 all fellas with nothing but gangs in there, about an average about 7 to 8 gangs.
And we're talking in the mid-'70s.
Yes, I'm talking about like early 70s when I went over there. And of all people who I had in my homeroom class, I'm gonna give you a brief story. First day coming in, there was some books hanging on the edge. I walked past, I knocked the books over. Guy said, yo, pick up my books. I just kept on walking forth. I didn't pay him no mind. Me, skinny, snotty, big red Afro kid. Yeah, yo, man, pick up my books. I said, I ain't picking up shit. The guy got up, I saw his size. He must have been at that time, which he still is, 6'6". I said, oh shit. What I'm gonna do? But one thing I always learn, somebody bigger than you, you know what you gotta do, you gotta pick up stuff. Pick up stuff, throw all kind of stuff at them, everything. So I managed to get out because, you know, in some of the classrooms, you always had 2 doors. So I got out the other side. The word got around to the fellas around the neighborhood and such. So then within 3 periods later, we caught up with each other. Saw him again, I broke away from him, and he looked at me, he started laughing. He said, yeah, I don't want to fight you, man. I like you. You got a lot of heart. You know who I am? I said, no, I don't know who you are. He said, they call me Blood. Where you from? I said, I'm from Harlem. He said, no wonder. Me and him became good friends. If anybody familiar with the boxing theory, there's a guy by the name of Mitch Green that always got into it with Mike Tyson. That was the guy who was the leader of the Black Pearls I got into it with.
Serious.
Yeah.
Serious.
Which later on, I got to learn about other various people because I was known before in the music, I was known for playing ball. So as I got involved with everybody else in the school, I started learning about all these other individuals that was living in parts of the Bronx, and some of them came from Bronx River. This guy named Scorpy, my man Tony Rome, and a couple others. So they used to always tell me about where they from. And I'm like, what is it about Bronx River? They say, man, you don't know. During that time as I was going to school, there was a couple other fellas that started telling me about these parties they had up in the Bronx. And they said, you need to come to the jam. That's what we was calling them, the jams. So what about them? Oh, man, you need to come to the jam. So my first time I went to the jam, it was in the Bronx on Jerome Avenue. It was a broken down area where it looked like condemned buildings, but it was still lights and everything. So I was a little apprehensive with a couple of the fellas walking. But then again, I saw people hanging in the hallway section, the staircase. I'm like, oh, I think it's all right. Because, you know, people hanging around like it's nothing. You're walking through all these people, and before you know, you got to the door, they asked for like $3. I walked in there, saw a whole bunch of people that wasn't dressed up, just being as they are. You know, a whole different awareness. And I kept walking straight to the back. Some way, somehow, I walked all the way to the back. I ran into this gentleman, a big, husky guy that was DJing. As he was DJing, I'll never forget, the setup was like this. He had a Shure PA system. You know, Shure PA systems at that time, they was like powerful to us. He had hooked up to it a Sony mic mixer. To the Sony mic mixer, he had 2 Pioneer PL-15 turntables. He had it all set up. And the way I saw how he was playing various records was different from what you hear on the radio or other places. And I'm like, what is this he doing? But I just stood there. I wasn't even thinking about the party that whole night. I just stood there, watched what he did. That gentleman go by the name of Kool Herc. And I started listening to various things he was playing. And at the same time while he's playing, there was a gentleman on the side that was on a microphone. He go by the name of Kool Herc, who I always consider the very first MC. And he kept on saying time after time, you rock and you don't stop, you rock on my mellow. And you have various people, he was shouting their names out. But then I was looking towards in the middle of the dance floor, I started seeing a lot of these fellas were doing all different type of footwork, which I had no idea that later on would be known as breakdancing. So I was just amazed at that whole theory of what they playing, how they dancing, the whole livelihood of how people was. And this is just up in the Bronx. So I say I felt proud that, I was going to school up there, bumping into people like Blood and people from Bronx River to introduce me to that sound.
What year was this that you remember seeing?
I got to say, this was around 73.
1973.
Around 73 about that time. Then I just regularly kept going to all his parties. The first place that I went to was called the Twilight Zone. After the Twilight Zone was a place called the Hevalo. From the Hevalo, the next place was called the Executive Playhouse. Meanwhile, he was always doing things up in the Bronx where it was in the high school or outdoors. Now, mind you, at this time, it wasn't no big advertisement. It was just word of mouth. Because from what I learned, Herc come from Kingston, Jamaica. He brought over a style that was perfected from home, but they were calling it toasting and dubbing. He brought it over, it turned out to become rapping and mixing. So as he perfected that and perfected a following, everybody was just coming from all the Bronx and parts of Harlem. And I think that's what really influenced me more and more. Then another thing I try to do, be a little sneaky guy, many a times I try to see if I can go behind the ropes and look around. And bigger he was at the time, he said, get your ass from back there. I went all the way back.
Yeah, Herc's a big guy.
Big guy.
That's I think where he got his name from Hercules.
Herc, because Hercules, because he was a big, strong guy, and they just shortened it for Herc.
You remember back in the early 70s at that time, what records he was playing?
Various records he was playing at the time that I got to learn later on was records like, of course, The Mexican by Babe Ruth, Just Begun, Jimmy Castro Bunch, Do What You Gotta Do by Collage, Shaft in Africa from the soundtrack of the movie, Listen to Me by Baby Huey, Get Into Something, Follow Me by the Isley Brothers. Mm-hmm. It was just a host of various records that he would put a twist into it, right along with the commercialized records that you would hear on the radio. And even when he was playing the commercialized records, he still added a little twist to it, how the way he blended in from one to another. Now,
how was what he was doing different than, say, like DJ Flowers or like maybe some of the disco Pete DJ Jones or something like that?
Usually the DJs in the clubs in the Midtown Manhattan, when they played the variation, mostly all the records. But he played was a portion of the record where it was, we used to call it the get down part. But later on it was named as break beats. But we used to call it the get down because it was time to get down. That's when you get ready to get into the groove of how that portion sounded. Mm-hmm. If it was 4 bars, 8 bars, 16, whatever it is, but you was just getting into it. And that's what he always was playing. And Herc was not a person that go ahead and go from one record to another on time, but it was just a fact that we know that he would play that and we was ready to go for it. And then he had DJs that he hired under him, one by the name of Timmy Tim and the original DJ Clark Kent. And they was the ones that started learning how to go timing the records from one to another. Now, at the same time when I was going to the parties, a host of other different guys was in there at the same time as me that I did not know, because you may know the faces, but you don't know who's who. But these guys became DJs later on, such as Flash, Mean Gene, who is the brother of Grand Wizard Theodore, Grandmaster Caz, AJ. They was the next offsprings that start becoming DJs in the Bronx. So as they start becoming DJs in the Bronx, you start following, going to all their parties. And they had certain locations throughout the Bronx that, you know, you go check out their jams.
Now, your cousin, Jay, also went to the jams at that time?
No, this is how this became. When I was going to all the jams and I was being inspired, when I started working, every time I was working, I would go ahead to the store they used to have called Disco Mat, real big at the time, and I spent all my money up on records. And even though I didn't have no set yet, but I was just collecting the records. After I was collecting the records, then I start later on saving up a little bit of money and buying my little set. My first set was Technics 1800s with a Clubman 1-1 mixer. And the way I had it set up, like, I just used to put my box spring and my mattress on the floor, put my crates right in front of it, and set my set right on top of it. So I had my crates of records right around by the side of the bed, had my set in front of me, sit on the edge of the bed, and just start DJing. Now, how I got to learn to DJ is by watching how people was catching certain parts of the record, so I'll watch them and I go home. Before I even got my set, I had a little old Gerard turntable hooked up to, you know, your home system, and I'd go ahead and I used to put my ear to it and listen for the certain record, certain breaks, you know where to hold it at. So then afterwards, as I learned that, and my cousin, he used to start always coming around. And when he was coming around, he saw what I was doing. He like, yo, man, what's this you doing? I said, yo, I started to learn how to DJ. So he asked me to teach him. So I started showing him the basics. At the time, my cousin was staying in Manhattan. My family, you know, stayed in Manhattan. Then from there, they moved up to the Bronx River Projects. When they moved to Bronx River Projects, he was getting more and more into DJing, and my aunt bought his first set, a pair of Technics SL 2023s, and a little Clubman mixer. Now, as he started DJing, somebody put the word in the streets to the guy, rest in peace, Disco King Mario, that come from another section of the Bronx, and Soundview section. He said, yo, man, this guy named Jazzy, man, you need to check him out. Disco King Mario was known to have a great sound system, but he didn't have turntables and he didn't have records. He only had very few records, but he was very competitive to the next man we'll talk about later on. Here it is. He got to hear about my cousin Jazz. He said, yo, you want to get down with me? Put you on. So he said, okay. He put him on. As he put him on, you know, he had him working. But he was jerking my cousin because he wasn't paying him. He would let my cousin get exposure. Meanwhile, the gentleman I'm about to talk about said, yo, who's this little guy that's working with Mario? They said, yo, that's that kid that just moving the projects. What he's doing over there? He's supposed to be down with us. That man I'm talking about, he go by the name of Afrika Bambaataa. Bambaataa at the time had two DJs before Jazzy, one named Zombu, the other named Simbag. One of them had fallen out, that he wasn't down with Bam no more, and that's when he approached my cousin. He said, yo, man, you don't need to be over there, man. You from the project. You need to be down with us. So Jazzy got away from him, and he came over. Meanwhile, as he brought him over, Jazzy kept on speaking up about me. He said, yo, you need to put my cousin down. Put my cousin. Who's your cousin? My cousin from down in Harlem. So that's when the next DJ fell out of place, and then he brought me in. So here you have Afrika Bambaataa, Jazzy J, and Red Alert.
So can you give us a little breakdown on what it was like to work with Bam back at that time? I mean, who was, you know, selecting the records? Who was putting the records on? What was the various roles of people?
From first thing I had learned, Bam was a very well-respected individual up in the Bronx because from his heydays of being in the gangs, he was a warlord of the Black Spades. His reputation preceded him very well throughout the Bronx. But what he had did during his time, he had learned to study the African heritage. and he went away to Africa to study it. At the same token time, he got more involved on the musical side. So from what I learned, his mother had brought him a system. As his mother brought him a system, he learned to tie between his sense of music and his sense of the African heritage and combine. Because after the gangs, he formed a crew called the Organization. It only lasted about a year because it still had this wild theory about it. So, but then when that died down, then he wanted to get more in like a conscious environment. So he formed the Zulu Nation. When he formed the Zulu Nation, he had, who I was saying, the people who was B-boys, he had people who was not only males but also females. He used to call them Shaka Zulu Kings and Shaka Zulu Queens from the project. And they'd be out there breakdancing and following the sounds of Bam like he's the Pied Piper. So that's how, I learned the creation of the Zulu Nation started being formed from the Bronx River Projects. And everybody wanted to join in, but at the same time, he was letting people acknowledge the heritage and start soliciting information and literature about Zulu Nation.
So he was taking basically the negative, he was eliminating the negative aspects of the gangs and emphasizing positivity and culture.
Around. Yeah, he turned everything around. He said, I'm tired of negativity. I want to show the positive side. I want to show that also that there's a side that we don't have to downgrade ourselves. We can uplift ourselves, and we can do this not only within the heritage but also through music. And Bam was also another person that if he liked you, he put you right on. He just put you down, because a lot of people didn't know that when it was us three as DJs, he had 10 MCs. Mr. Biggs, Pow Wow, Glow, Lisa Lee, Hutch Hutch, Ice Ice, Master B, Charlie Rock, and I forgot the last person's name. It was 10 MCs. So we was just doing that. Now, Bam was the person that he was known for being the master of records. The reason he had been known as the master because he came out with various sounds that nobody would ever describe. He would dig deep into all different various records. His collection is still crazy to this day.
So he wasn't sticking with just like James Brown.
Oh, he touched on everything.
He would go
so deep. And the thing about it, to this day, that my cousin can tell you, if he was to put certain records on that he got covered, we may don't know these records, but we knew where to put the needle at. Because it's a certain way how he had, the records formed where you knew what it was. And he would just pull the records out. As he pulled the records out, he put it on the turntable. He said, I want you to play that next. And then we just go ahead and put our mind to it, play it.
So Bam would have his crates at the gig, and he would be
15 crates of records.
How many?
15 crates of records.
15 crates of records.
15. Of all different sounds.
And he would select which record he wanted to go at that time.
It's not for us to select, it's what he select.
That's right.
And whatever he select is what the MC got to be ready to go ahead and recite over.
Okay.
You have to be on point. Like, he's like the general. If he tell you to go, you go. If he tell you this what he wants you to play, this what you play.
Did he have the labels blacked out at that time?
Either blacked out, or he took this old idea that Herc used to do. Herc used to soak the labels off. Soak the labels off and switch them. It could be two different records. He learned how to soak it off. It slides off. He'll take from here and put it on that record, take it on and put it on that record. So just in case he was to go past, and you see that label, well, that's the record? Okay, I know what the record is. I go in the store and buy the record, you got the wrong record. He fooled you. Bam did the same thing, but then Bam blacking out a lot of other records or did some other different little style to it. But once again, me and Jazzy knew which record it was.
So for some of the people who might not know, why was he doing that?
Because at that time, in the beginning of the hip-hop era in music, every DJ was recognized for certain records. Flash was recognized for a certain record. Bam was recognized for a certain record. The L Brothers with Grandmaster Theodore recognized a certain record. It was everybody had an identity for its sound and its style. But Bam that beat everybody out because he had a wider selection more than anybody else. That's why they call him the Master of Records.
Now, what were the difference maybe between like Herc and Bam as far as the styles that they played?
Herc, once again, is the person that started off this whole set. He's the beginner. And not only that, he had a well-respected sound system. In the past then, if you had a Macintosh amp, you was earned respect because at that time, you know, it's hard to get a Macintosh. You know, who had that kind of money?
That's not a Macintosh computer. That's a Macintosh
amplifier. The amplifier, yeah, Macintosh amplifier. It's like in the street, you gain respect and you got a Mac. And he had a mean sound system. We had started learning to build our sound system with the credibility also with behind my cousin Jay, because as he went to Gompers High School, he learned to take up carpentry and he built speakers. Jay built speakers that was bigger than him. He made double scoops. And then, you know, we also used to do, with our devilish ways, we used to go ahead downtown, and at the time in the train system, they used to have the bullhorns. We used to steal the bullhorns. Take them home, soak them, clean them, and we used the horns. And then we used to find where we can get little loose tweeters and built tweeter boxes. So we did everything from scratch. And then the difference is between Herc and Bam, Herc the beginner, Bam the next person, go ahead, perfect it and take it to the next level. It's like saying, everybody know about Dr. J, but here come Michael Jordan taking it to another level. Okay. Like that.
So, can you give us some examples of some of the records that Bam came up on that were far outside the genre that people might not expect?
He was the one that perfected records like Impeach the President, Last Night Changed It All by Esther Williams. What other records? It was this record called On the Top.
Mm-hmm. And he would reach into rock. He would reach into European records.
He reached into all different genres of music. And once that came in place, living a couple years later, the recording field came in. When the recording field came in, you had a lot of the independent labels that start, you know, go ahead and put out records. Enjoy under Mr. Bobby Robinson. Mr. Peter Brown put out, I forgot his label, he put out people like Spoonie G and Woody
Sound
Wood.
of New York.
Yeah, Sounds of New York, and others. So by that time, Paul Whitley, he stepped to Bambaataa and said, I want to go ahead and make a record. So that's when he put out Zulu Throwdown. And that was the Cosmic Force. That was Lisa Lee, Ike C, Chub Chub, and Ice Ice.
Now, at that time, we're talking about probably 79.
79 to 80.
There were the gentlemen you mentioned, Bobby Robinson, Paul Winley, and Peter Brown, Patrick Adams. Yeah. They were entrepreneurs in Harlem,
right?
Who had experimented with lots of different musical styles over the years.
Yes.
What was the kind of turning point? Because rapping had never really been, you know, on a record. What you guys were doing was something in a party. Right.
Well, one thing I gotta give respect to every one of them individuals you just mentioned, because they felt something that nobody else felt. They was the trendsetters. They was the ones that willing to take the chance as they independent upon their own, you know, independent labels, that they is amongst seeing how the people was reacting in the street. Because another thing, this music that we was playing, you always had tapes. We used to tape all the parties, right from scratch. You know, who's DJing and who MCing. So these tapes became popular, circulating around all throughout the hood. up in Harlem and up in the Bronx. And these tapes was being sold like crazy. I mean, I made a lot of money off of selling these tapes because I used to tape every Zulu Nation party. So I guess that what really caught their ears. They say, you know, let me get a hold of these guys who's doing these, tapes and reciting. Let's take them in the studio. So that's what he did.
What was the progression from originally hearing, rock, y'all, shouting out people, yes, y'all, and more like an MC for a DJ in a party to an actual MC reciting rhymes, routines, and things like that? Who are some of the pioneers who were taking it beyond just a party MC to?
It had to be people such as Melly Mel and his brother Kid Creole that start becoming storytellers. They start having routines. As they start having routines, then you had other people start coming along, such as Grandmaster Caz, who was known as Casanova Fly at the time, and a guy by the name of Whip and Dada Rock, who was known as Salt and Pepper, one light skin, one dark skin. They was always doing storytelling. So even though you always had like the party rocking theory of saying yes, yes, yes to the beat, y'all, rock on and simple little rhymes, they took it to another standard. Meanwhile, as that was going up in the Bronx, there's other people that was down in Manhattan that started getting more into MCing, such as the Treacherous Three, Kumo D, LA Sunshine, and Special K, right along with Spoonie G. And they start telling stories, So that's where it started taking to another level as far as MCing is concerned.
Now, a lot of people outside of that community, the first rap record with rapping on it that they heard was the Sugar Hill Gang. Well,
you could say it was, but not really.
Right.
It really was a combination of two. It was King Tut the Third by the Fatback Band, and you heard a little bit of rapping on this record called Must Be the Music by The Secret Weapon. And I guess between them two, people still looking at that as more like dance disco records. It wasn't like straight up actual rap record. What had happened that this guy named Big Bang Hank, who was the manager for the Cold Crush Brothers, he had a tape of their music at the job he was working at as a pizza parlor in Jersey. Here it is. I think either Sylvia or somebody affiliated with Sylvia heard the tape and say, "Hey, that's you?" And he said, "Yeah," lying. But it really was his group. So he said, "I want you to go ahead. Can you get together? I'm forming a group. I'd like to know you'd like to get part of the group." So yeah. So he came to Caz and said, "Caz, they want me in this group. Can you get me some rhymes?" Caz just pulled out his book of literature and say, "Pick whatever you want." Because Caz, in the street mind, thinking, well, and they're going to put you on. I know you're going to look out for us because you our manager.
So the manager of the group back then had the tape. He was listening to it as part-time job in the pizza place.
Right.
Sylvia Robinson or somebody associated with her came in for her pizza. Here's this tape. Mm-hmm. And says, "That's good. I wanna get you on my label, Sugar Hill."
Right.
And the rhymes that Big Bang Hank actually used in Rapper's Delight was taken directly from Grandmaster Caz.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you listen to that record, he even says in there, "I'm the CASA, the NOVA, and the rest is FLY."
Yeah.
And that's Casanova Fly, which is Caz's.
Yeah, that was his official.
That's his rhyme.
That was his official name because Caz was known as a DJ before MC. So that's it. So as we move on, as it progressed more and more, different rap records start coming along under independent labels. Here it is. We had moved from moving around doing parties in the Bronx and Harlem, and we was hitting like Jersey, parts of Connecticut, and on out into us. We thought it was big because, we moving around. We only in the tri-state area. Bam had came across two individuals, one by the name of Tom Silverman, and another by the name of Ritza Blue. Tom Silverman, of course, the CEO of Tommy Boy. Ritza Blue, who was a known punk rock promoter they both invited him to the downtown side. Otherwise, Tom Silver invited him to the recording side, Ritz invited him to the club side. So that's when we start being open to other different audience. And at the same time, we was forming in place where it was punk rock, new wave, hip hop, all in one roof. So imagine we doing our thing jamming with some people that got on the crazy mohawk. And we look at them like weird and crazy, but we learning to fit in. But we had came across various artists at that time like Nina Hagen, Devo, Men at Work, Talking Heads. We was playing at various clubs like the Grill, from the Grill to Danceteria. Now, mind you, during that time from the Grill to Danceteria, that's when Tom Silverman came to BAM and say, pull out a couple of your MCs to form a group, make this record. Now, on the side of the Soul Sonic Force had 10 MCs. 3 of them was in a little group that me and my cousin Jazzy had, which first was known as the Jazzy 3. We formed them into the Jazzy 5. So he picked them first, and because they had a little style upon their own, and they went and made the record called Jazzy Sensation, off of Funky Sensation.
Gwen McCrae.
Right. So by the time we getting ready to do our thing, coming out of Danceteria, getting ready to make our next move, Tom had joined BAM along with Arthur Baker and John Roby to go and perfect this next record. And that's the record, I think, that opened the doors for all of us, which was Planet Rock.
Planet Rock.
In '82. By the time we got to the Roxy, that was like, an introduction for us to the world.
Now, a lot of people might not realize that what Red was talking about moving downtown, there wasn't a lot of interaction necessarily between the uptown scenes and the downtown scenes.
No, because the downtown scene was just coming to the end of the disco era. As it was coming to the end of the disco era, the new wave and punk rock was now taking in place and was coming in very heavy. But they only had a taste of the hip hop sound. People like Fab Five Freddy, who introduced that to Blondie, where you saw how that record took off, and various others. So this is like open doors for us to start coming down to show our skills.
Right. Fab Five Freddy, who sort of was a person who moved in between the two scenes pretty easily.
Right.
He introduced the downtown people to what was going on in the Bronx and in Harlem, and that as a result of that, you had records like Rapture by Blondie, which you can hear Debbie Harry do, her little imitation.
That became like nationally known, worldwide.
And by coming downtown to a club like Negril, which was a kind of a reggae club.
It was a reggae club. They used to say at the time it was supposed to have been Bob Marley's club. That's what they used to state. But it was a reggae club. But that was our introduction coming down there. I think that was 13th Street and 2nd Avenue, around there.
That's right.
And
Danceteria, which was very much a new wave, punk. That was a crazy place where you would see anything and everything. I mean, that's when I started acknowledging. I started experiencing, seeing things I had never seen in my life, as far as people is concerned. When it definitely came to within the same sex, I was scared to go to the bathroom at one point. But musically, things just exploded as far as what the different types of music that everyone was being exposed to. Both the people downtown were getting exposed to what you all were bringing,
and vice versa.
And then vice versa. And you had a group like Kraftwerk, that would become very influential in what the sound of Planet Rock became.
Exactly, because what BAM did, he did a twist of a little bit of Kraftwerk, a little bit of some punk, a little bit of some funk, and he perfected and grinded. He gave the ideas to Arthur Baker and John Wilby to go ahead to the studio to mesh it all together. And he called it electro funk. That's what it was. And you know, we had no idea that that record was really going to touch the world, because if you think about it, behind that one record, how many records came out, if it was dance, hip hop, whatever it was, had that electro sound. And that sound was going on for a good 2-3 years.
Yep. There's people to this day. In fact, even this morning, one of the other people who was here was mentioning how important Planet Rock was to everything that came after it.
Right, it was big. And then of course, you know, it got a twist of it when it went far south. Within, they start adding more bottom to it. That became the bass music, but the official substance of it was the, you know, the Planet Rock. You know, that's what it was.
So to move, how did things move forward as you went into the 80s, the mid 80s?
Well, during that time while we was going from Dancerton to the Roxy, we start building up in the Roxy, and we start building up in the Roxy so much, the audience just start getting bigger and bigger. The Roxy is known as a skating ring, a well-known skating ring for years.
Roller skating, place for roller skating.
But it just got so popular on a Friday until when it started peaking, we used to average about 3,500 people in there every Friday night. Mind you, once again, it wasn't no major advertisement, not on radio. It was, you know, like the Village Voice publication, or, you know, the downtown scene with the flyers and stuff. But we had, like, it was like a melting pot. You had all different nationalities coming together to party. And that's when we start learning to play everything. R&B, hip hop, punk rock, new wave, alternative, rock, Caribbean, dance. We just learned to play everything together. And not only that, but we started seeing a lot of celebrities start coming hanging out at our club like it was a norm. People like, what was her name that used to be married to Mick Jagger? Bianca?
Bianca Jagger.
Bianca used to come in there all the time. Rick James used to come in there all the time. To me, it was the birth for people like Madonna, who was coming in there at that time, and people acknowledged who she was. It was the place where DST got to meet Herbie Hancock, where later on they made
Rocket.
You know, so a lot of people were just hanging in there. You know, during that time, we had a radio show on an independent station. Independent station is WHBI 105.9, where everybody always feel that is where hip hop radio was created, because Mr. Magic, he was the first person that started doing hip hop radio. In 1980, we had a show on there called Zulu Beats, and the person who was the spearhead of that was Afrika Islam, who was the son of Bambaataa. Not his biological son, we just call him the son of Bambaataa. And he was doing the show, and I used to come down there all the time, because once again, everybody knew me for having all the tapes of the parties, and I used to bring the tapes down there and play them. And I played them, and he doing it, and you know, Islam was on top of his game then. He was on top of his game that, you know, he was one of the baddest. So, a little later on, there was some people that was coming from the radio station, 98.7 KISS FM. And they was hearing so much about what's going on in the Roxy, they came down. So, a guy by the name of Barry Mayo, who was the program director at the time, he came and introduced himself to the band and said, hey, listen here, we have interest of forming a mixed show with some hip hop in it. The reason he came about that because already WBLS had introduced Mr. Magic over there in '82, and he started doing his show called Mr. Magic Rap Attack. So KISS FM, which is their competitors, wanted to form not a straight up rap show, but a mixed show with hip hop involved in it. So of course, Bam appointed the first person was Islam. Islam had a couple of appointments that he did not show up to. He missed a couple of appointments. So they came to Bam and said, well, who the next person you have in mind? So they went after my cousin Jazzy. He was the next man in line. Jazzy did it for about a couple of months. He did not get paid for none of the mixes, but he had gained great exposure for parties and studio. Jazzy got fed up, and he said, nah, I don't want to do it no more, because he saw he wasn't getting paid, you know. You know the mentality in the streets. You feel like, you know, you're supposed to get yours right off the top. So they came to the band and said, well, who the next person you have in mind? He said, well, got this guy Red Alert. So they brought me in there. It was in October of '83. And I did it for like 3 months without pay, but gained exposure, everything. And by '84, I got my first check, which wasn't much, but it beats a blank. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was just on every other week, because the other people they used to have on there before me was Shep Pettibone and Tony Humphrey. And everybody knew they was known for what they were doing with the dance music, and especially Tony Humphrey with the house music. So I used to be on every other week. And every time I got on, after that, I only got paid $100. But look how much exposure I gained behind that. Then about 7 months after I got on, then they brought in Chuck Chillout. So then they alternate me and Chuck Chillout back and forth on Saturdays. And we used to be on from 11 to 2. And then also who they brought in was another group, the Latin Rascals. They was another set. I think they came in before Chuck Chillout, because they was known for their style with the editing and everything. You know, it's got them good deals in production. Mm-hmm.
So they were featuring all different styles at that point.
Yes.
But I guess sometime around 85 or 86, there was kind of a breakthrough in how people could make music, because the first samplers really started being used at that point, and you had people who were able to actually start making their own music at that time beyond drum machines.
Right.
Now, who were some of the first people that you heard to start using that stuff?
Well, I definitely have to state about, within God Bless the Dead, my man Scott LaRock, because how the way he sampled the bits and pieces off of James Brown for the record called South Bronx. And I'll never forget the first time I heard it, when he brought it to the club I used to play at called Latin Quarters. And because they was pissed off behind the situation that Mr. Magic had did. They was a group known at first called 2316 that made record called Success is the Word, that was on sleeping bags. And
this is KRS.
Yeah, KRS
and Scott LaRock, their first group.
Right. And Mr. Magic at BLS at the time, he had a big reputation about dissing everybody. He even dissed me all the time on the radio. He dissed everybody because, you know, he felt he can do that. So when he dissed them, they was pissed. And it was so bad that they dropped the group off the label. So when they came across this other set of people that had Rock Candy Records, they formed themselves into Boogie Down Production. When they heard that this record came out by MC Shan, who's under affiliation of Marley Marl, who's a part of Mr. Magic, called The Bridge, they said, okay, we're gonna have an answer for that. Because that was another thing that started taking in place, answer records. And how that started, because of the Roxanne era. So they did an answer to it with the record called South Bronx. So like I said, the first night I heard it, there was this big guy that used to DJ in there on Celebrity Tuesdays in Latin Quarters called Rahul. Scott gave it to Rahul, said, yo, play this record. Put on the acid tape, he played it. Oh my God, everybody going crazy. He took it off, he played it again. Going crazy. After 2 plays on the acid tape, Scott took it, passed it to me, said, this is for you to play on the radio. That was one of the first sample records I actually start listening to.
And that, of course, also, that sampled James Brown. And James Brown at that time really became the guy to sample.
Oh, yeah, the most sampled, gotta be like the most sampled person ever, you know? But then at the same token of time, Marley was doing a lot of production by sampling bits and pieces too. You know, a lot of people don't know that Marley used to do a lot of his production in his room and where he lived at in the projects, the Queensbridge projects. And that sampling just became so popular that everybody just jumped on the board instead of using the drum machine. They just jumped on the board. Because, you know, the drum machine went through so many different theories. As you see how people use it so clever from its ever of the planet rock to becoming so simple to when it came to Run DMC, where they didn't add too much to theirs. It was just simple drum rolls. But people was getting tired, so they wanted to do something different. That's when the sampling came in.
And what were some of the big records that you were playing back at that time? I mean, the show had evolved from a little bit of hip-hop to all hip-hop.
Yeah, because once again, it was a mixed show where they wanted me to be diverse with R&B, dance, hip-hop. But what happened that the hip-hop started coming in more and more stronger. As it started coming more and more stronger, it became more hip-hop, fewer dance R&B. I was still perfecting some R&B and dance, but it wasn't being as potent as the hip-hop was coming in. And not only that, but during this time, like I said, when me and Chuck used to alternate, we used to be on from 11 to 2. If we was on 11 to 2, they used to have us on reel to reel. We wasn't on live yet. We was on reel. The reason why they moved us from 11 to 2 down to 9 to 12 to prime time, because they heard our tapes and they saw that we wasn't into editing and splicing. And they asked us, how come y'all don't edit and splice? And we said, well, this is what the streets feel. The same way what they hear you play on the radio, they expect to hear you play the same way in the club. So if you don't play the same way in the club as on radio, they feel that you're a phony. So you learn how to play straight out. So that's when they move us down, and they put Chuck on Friday, and they put me on Saturday, 9 to 12. And during that time, like I say, the radio war was starting to take place, because we was on the same time as Magic, and we was giving BLS hell. We was just giving them hell, but it was healthy, because even before then, I skipped over something. During the Roxanne era, which UTFO really started that whole craze, and Shantae, who's affiliated under Marley, did the answer. There was a young lady that did the answer to Shantae by the name of Sparky D. Sparky D did Sparky's turn answering Shantae, and she was produced by Spider D. They was all under affiliation of Russell Simmons of Rush Production. I used to always hang out at Russell's office in his earliest days. And when we met each other, and she just made that record, she just turned around to me and said, "You want to be my DJ?" I said, "Okay." So it was always a rivalry going on, somewhat, because I'm representing for her, Molly representing for Shantae. But we was on the road all the time doing shows. And it was crazy because even though we know that we going at each other's throat, we looked out for each other on the road, regardless of whatever goes on. As a matter of fact, their road manager, Fly Ty, was my roommate.
Okay.
You know, we was just that close, and it's great to see that even to this day that Sparky and Shantae are great friends. Me and Marley, we work at the same radio station together, and we laugh about how people was trying to compare us, you know, and be so close.
No, it's really true that back in those days it was serious.
And excuse me, to see within years later how they see how me and KRS One, right along with Shan and Magic, do a Sprite commercial. So it go to show you that even though we was at each other, look what it turned out to be later on.
And around getting into like 86, 87, your nephews also started.
No, they really got involved around the late 80s. Now, when you talking about 86, 87, 86 I was doing a club called Union Square. And that's when there was the next, see the first set of people I say like in early 80s was like the Run DMC, the Houdinis, the introduction of LL Kool J, the Fat Boys. When it came to around 86 into 87, now here come Eric B. Rakim, here come Boogie Down Production. Here comes Salt and Pepper. Here come Mo D as a solo artist, and various others. And that's when I was transcending from Union Square. I started DJing over at Latin Quarters. And I would start getting more in-depth and involved with Boogie Down Production, and had started building relations with people such as my man Mark the 45 King, who, you know, is my man through thick and thin. And, you know, I just learned how to start building my criteria, because what took in place was the visual aspect, videos, all different things that I learned how to market myself to, you know, bring my name up to another standard. Now, when it came to late 80s, that's when my nephew, he always been asking me for the longest, yo, me and my group want to do a record, me and my group want to do a record. So by the time they graduated, I said, okay, I think I'm going to give y'all a shot. Because my man Tony D, who was a producer and DJ of a group called Bad Boys that made a record called Inspector Gadget, he said, Red, whenever you got a group, just let me know you ready. So they was ready, and I brought them over to Tony D. The first record they were supposed to do called The Breaks, which was a sample of the B-side of Do the Funky Chicken by Rufus Thomas. It was that drum set in the B-side, do you want to see it? So they were going to use that, it was going to be called A Break, but they went ahead and wrote this other song of a slogan that was always used in my family. The slogan that my older brother was known for always saying. Every time if he saw a female, he said, yeah, you see her? Yeah, she on my Jimblowski. She's on my Jimblowski, she on the Jimblos. So my nephew, Mike G, said him and who was known as Shazam, later on became known as Afrika, got their heads together and they made this record called Jimbrowski. As they made a record called Jimbrowski, that opened the doors for them as the Jungle Brothers.
That was the Jungle Brothers' first record.
Yeah.
Jungle Brothers featuring DJ Red Alert, I think it said.
Right.
You were in on the recording of that.
Yeah, you know, they had me do all the little, you know, like segues, you know, stuff, different saying like word up, you know, and stuff like that.
And I think on the maybe on the B side of that record, they were cutting up
Bragging and boasting.
They were cutting up Impeach the President.
Right, that was Sammy B, their DJ. Sammy B is on the cut.
Right. So at that point, you had seen hip hop, rap music progress from being something that was almost unheard of outside of that small community uptown. It moved downtown. It moved to the tri-state area, and all of a sudden, there were videos being made. MTV happened around that time,
right?
And people needed videos, and now you were getting the chance to travel across the country. Right.
Well, I gotta state that I got my chance to travel across the country the first time was in '85. I went overseas with Bam, one of the MCs named Ike C, Lisa Lee, the graffiti artist by the name of Brim, and the Dynamic Breakers. So when I went over there, and I was amazed because I had no idea that when I went over there, a lot of the kids found out who I was running up on me, asking for autographs. And I turned around, I was like, how in the heck do they know who I am? What do they know about me? For what I learned, that a lot of people used to take me off the radio, bring it over to London, and what was popular in London at the time was pirate radio. People used to make, their own radio stations, and it transmit within various amount of blocks in the local areas. And they'll play the whole entire show, commercials and everything. But that's how everybody, and same thing I learned from when I started traveling around different places where people who used to take me off the radio once again would go away to school, go into the service, go see family, and the tapes would travel. And I used to have people come up to me boldly and say, yo, I make money off of you. How you make money off of me? Yo, man, I'm in school, man. I had to learn how to make some money, so I used to tape you off the radio, take to the school, make copies and sell it. I couldn't be mad because later on, what they did, they helped promote me where people was hiring me to do school gigs, homecomings, different places. So instead of paying for your own promotion, they paid for me. So when you were looking upon from that and also from how people acknowledge you overseas, all the way up to where you start being involved with different groups and learn how to market yourself in the visual as well as audio, it's like you just enhance the whole thing. But at the same token of time, I'm gonna tell you, the last thing that honestly was on my mind was the money. The money was good. The money wasn't great, but the money was good. But when you so much involved with what you enjoy doing, you just keep rolling. And that's what I think was for a lot of people before me, as far as artists are concerned, musicians are concerned, it's the love of it. It's the love of it. When I take time, and I was reading up and also seeing the movie Listen Up by Quincy Jones and the knowledge of what he went through. And then I take time and listen a lot of other people's stories of what they went through. But they still show the passion that they still around doing it. The money the last thing you think of. Of course, you start thinking about money later on because my concern about money today is because a family I have. Take care of my well-being. Proud to say that my youngest is in the first year of college. My oldest just made me a grandfather. So you got to think family, but during my prime time and all of that, wasn't thinking money. I was just thinking of having fun, enjoying it, doing it, proceeding it, let it roll.
What do you think the attitude of some of the pioneers who you've come up with, who you know, when they look back and see what they helped start, where it's gotten to, and the fact that for most of them, they really saw next to no monetary reward for what they've done?
Of course, a lot of the pioneers, a lot of them are very bitter because what they started, they don't see nothing in return for them. But you got to think about indifference of times. Once again, and I always use this as an analogy because it's my love of what I was doing before I got into music. Dr. J was one of the most creative people in basketball that took basketball to another level. But he wasn't getting that money compared to the money you see LeBron getting now. So it's all in the form of time. So when you, here it is that the pioneers, they was doing their thing and was taking it in stride, but wasn't receiving. Not only that, but nobody direct them about the business, about the notion. Here it is, they become naive and they get caught out there. So now, the next set of people come around, they the ones that start collecting. Yo, where's mine? It's not there, but you can be mad at it, but you can't be mad at it. But then again, if you would allow yourself to learn and proceed, and not only that, you can't be on the stage. Now maybe it's for you to be behind the scene to conduct the next person, show the next person. You may collect from there. Mm-hmm. There's a way to go about it.
Right. So I know that coming up tonight, you're going to be playing some music for all the people here in Seattle, and that you're going to have to get prepared for that soon. So we're not going to get too in-depth right now, but I'd like to see if you could give the people here an idea of some of the foundation records that, you know, are essential for understanding the spirit of hip-hop music, talking about the breaks.
Well, what I'm bringing tonight, I brought records that was in the beginning of the hip-hop era, and also brought a lot of the old school rap records that in the 80s, Plus, I brought some old reggae and some old classics. And to me, I feel I just brought some feel-good music for tonight.
Okay.
Some good old feel-good music that people can reminisce, enjoy, and vibe with. That's the whole idea.
Now, what about if we're out at the club tonight and we hear just a song that we love, but we don't know what the title is? Now, do you have your label switched around and blacked out, or are you going to let us know what's what?
I didn't do that. I didn't do that. I will tell you. I have no problem with it. I'll tell you.
All right, all right. That sounds good. Mm-hmm. Red's definitely still on the radio, big presence to this day. Can you tell the people where they can hear you?
Yes, I still do. Back in New York, I do Power 105.1, the old school at noon, Monday to Fridays at 12. Besides that, I'm on Sirius satellite radio. I've been on Sirius for 4 years. I'm on a channel called Boombox, and it's very clever for what I'm programming on there because I'm playing old school hip hop combined with various artists like Chemical Brothers, Prodigy, Crystal Method, everybody within that set.
You're playing Prodigy in your sets?
And listen here. Nobody expect for me to be cutting up honky tonk by the Rolling Stones.
No, they didn't.
So I'm just, once again, learning to be creative and being open-minded.
So it seems like the real spirit of hip hop might be more about being creative and expressing yourself than it is following a particular trend or something like that.
Yeah, because the reason why, well, number one, the reason why you heard the term hip-hop. The term hip-hop had came from the media. When the media used to always hear the MCs reciting and always saying to the hip-hop, and they say, what's that? They say, that's that hip-hop, beat-bop, that's hip-hop. So it became a stamp. And people just look at it only as in a music form, but not acknowledging everything else that was going on besides the music form. And once again, when we was not capable to go head on downtown to various places where you had to be at a certain age or you had to be dressed in a certain attire or you wasn't allowed to express yourself, everybody just stayed in the local neighborhood and just became as they are. And before you know it, it perfected your footwork, what you do on the dance floor, what you do as far as reciting on the mic, or what you playing records, or what you do as far as drawing on the trains or drawing on the walls. All that became part of a culture that got together at one time.
All right. Well, I want to give everyone here a chance to ask Red anything they might have on their minds, or take advantage of this opportunity to talk to somebody who's really, was there from the very beginning, and I'd like to open it up now.
Yeah, hi. I'm interested in how you felt when the importance of the DJs declined and MCs became increasingly important and the stars of the shows.
Can you say that a little louder, please?
Yeah. Well, like the founding fathers of hip hop, like Kool Herc, Afrika Bambaataa, Grandmaster Flash, they're all DJs, and at a certain time, it changed. The spotlight changed from the DJs to the MCs in hip hop. How did you feel as a DJ when that happened? And
I felt that if you want to spotlight, you should spotlight everybody as an equal. What had happened, once again, when the recording field came in place, they only go emphasize upon the person who was recording, which is the MC. So it's like saying, if you go, put in James Brown, also put in the Fabulous Flames, because that was the group. But they don't do that as far within the marketing and promotion of companies do. They only focus on, they call them rappers today. They only focus on the rapper and leave the DJs out. In the beginning, you used to hear Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. You used to hear Eric B. and Rakim as an example. You don't hear that no more. The only people who still stay true to this day, when you hear Gangstar, they are equal. When you know you're getting both the MC and the DJ. But not only that, but we also heard that a lot of the rappers don't even have DJs now. They just want to use the machine. So it's the recording field that really dissect everything. Anybody else?
All right. Anybody else have something they want to say? Yeah, my man now. Okay.
Hello. Yeah, I was wondering, how did you get your DJ name?
Before I got into music, I know I skipped this part, I was known for playing basketball. I played high school ball. And I was one toothpick. I was one little narrow-ass, skinny, big red afro kid. And everybody knew my style of play. And they used to always, like first thing they used to always do when I used to be up and down the court, they used to always scream out the sounds of the fire truck. And then somebody started saying, Red Alert, Red Alert, Red Alert. And that name just stuck on. At the same token of time, I got along with everybody, so they just add Kool to it. And that's what happened.
And I guess another one, always a good one, ask a DJ who their favorite DJ is. Who's your favorite DJ, or did you ever have a favorite DJ?
Can you say that again, please?
Sorry, mate. Who's your favorite DJ, or do you not have one, or who would you like to listen to?
It all depends. There's so many different various DJs that I enjoy. There's a guy back in New York, he originally from Philadelphia. I enjoy the sounds of my man, Rich Medina. He's bad. My man, who everybody knew him as the MC D Nice, he got involved, he's DJing, he's doing this thing now. What else can I say? I still enjoy listening to my cousin Jazzy. He's still on point with his cuts, and Theodore, you know. It all depends for what mood it is. Mm-hmm.
And I guess another one, are there any records that you're looking for that you still haven't found?
Yeah, you got me right there. I can't think of it now, but if I come up with it, I'll see you, I'll tell you.
I just wondered, because it seems like you probably got a lot of records. Like, how many would you say you have?
Nowhere near BAM, I know that. But I got a great amount. I can't tell you because I still receive records every day. So it's hard to count.
I'll tell you a funny story that I ran into your nephew a couple years ago, and he was telling me that there was a whole house full of records that belonged to you that he had to get rid of. That was all promos from back in those days when you were receiving all kinds of stuff. Now, he said that there was, 10,000 records, even more than that they had to get rid of. So somewhere, this guy's got a lot of records.
And not only that, rest in peace, my mother, she used to always get mad because she used to complain about them records. And when she used to always complain, them damn records, I said, Mom, pay the bills. God bless her. That's another thing I meant to mention, that I feel that my mother have a big part of my career because during the time when I started getting into DJing, I used to be in the back room and playing the records, and my father, rest in peace, he used to always complain, cut that shit off, cut that damn noise off. My mother used to say, I'd rather have them in the back instead of have them in the street. Here go my father, I don't want to hear that. So afterwards, my father saw I got involved with radio, but then he passed away. And then I started receiving awards. As I started receiving awards, I used to always say to my mother, I wish Dad was here to see this compared to how he used to complain. And she said, don't worry, he's looking at it right now. He's looking right down at you and he's smiling. And not only that, but within a little afterwards, when my mother had retired, she had became like a mother to everybody that used to always come by, because my house was like, quote unquote, the house to hang, sleep, whatever. Everybody from Jungle Brothers to Tribe to De La to Latifah to Light to everybody just came in there and vibe, and everybody took the moms. And been 3 years since she's no longer with me, but she had been my backbone of for me and my nephew Mike and a host of others. And you know, she was a spearhead, definitely a spearhead.
Rest in peace.
Hard to get out them couches, right?
Thank you. Yeah, hi. Coming from outside of the U.S., from South Africa, looking in, and you know, just the hip hop scene outside of the U.S. basically. What I see is that there's more appreciation for, you know, the old school, you know, outside of the States than there is, you know, here. Basically, my question is, you know, rock music, you know, they still acknowledge, the youngsters will still acknowledge Mick Jagger and, you know, all their legends. So my question is, you know, how do you feel about, you know, the young generation sort of trying to deny, you know what I mean, the people that laid down the foundations, you know?
What I always had learned from generation to generation, that instead of acknowledging what was before them, it's a principle upon they want to be acknowledged first. And that's a general factor, because there's always going to be history before you, but in some people, not all people, but in some people's mind, they have this thing about, yeah, but that was them, but this is now, this is me. Acknowledge me. This is me. This is what's happening. Until it's going to be their turn as they get older, and somebody come along, and then they go have the same feeling, well, how come I'm not being acknowledged? Because it's their turn. So you thinking about I, but if it wasn't for them, it wouldn't be no you. So respect the people before you, and not only that, if you respect the people before you, not only they will forget you, but they'll still pull you along. That's why we still respect the people like James Brown today. The average little kid knows something about James Brown. The average little kid still knows something about Michael Jackson. The sad part about it in hip-hop, the average kid don't even know about Big Daddy Kane. So I'm just saying that as an example that stop thinking about yourself. Yes, you want to build, you want to be acknowledged, but acknowledge the people that help you along where you're at.
Thank you.
Do you think people out there are doing that? How can, you know, are the younger generation gonna learn about Big Daddy Kane?
Well, that come also with as far as the media and communication is concerned, because the sad part, radio. Here it is, radio only want to go according to within their advertisers, because you know it's business. For saying, if you have a radio station, it don't have to be just R&B and hip hop, it could be any other genre, but they cater to like an audience demo of 18 to 34. From that 18 to 34, they only want you to program that range of music that attract that audience. Now, if it's records that's older than that audience, they don't want you to touch on it. So if you don't touch on them records would dissolve. If them records would dissolve, nobody don't know the history of the artists, the records, and so forth. And that's where it's a missing pattern right there. It's times that I know I have played records when I do the old school at noon back in New York, And just like I say, I use Big Daddy Kane as a prime example because you know Big Daddy Kane was big at one point. The average female who may be 20, 21, I never heard of him. Now, mind you, 2021, 10 years ago, she was 11, 12, but then again, that was what, 94, 95. Kane only came out, and his heydays was like to what, 90? So they don't know that. But then again, I tried to bridge a little bit of everything for everybody to acknowledge. So, you know, it's only right for you to acknowledge your past.
Now, on the Old School at Noon show, definitely you'll be touching on all of those, you know, classics.
And there's a guideline because, once again, it's a business, and of course I don't care for it, but I got to go by the rules. On the Old School at Noon, they don't want me to go nowhere past 90.
That's old school. In New York, the
Once
definition
again,
of old school.
To that audience, that's 18 to 34, they want me to be within 90 up. They don't want me to go 90 down. But then again, to within the other demos of radio, such as a KISS and BLS, where their audience is 25, 54, they don't want to be bothered with none of the early hip hop. And I always complain to them, I say, yeah, but they grew up on that early hip hop because they still try and put a stamp of like hip hop is negative. But okay, you may look at hip hop as negative, but you think about it from the beginning of the rap records from 79 to I Give No More to probably like 88, none of them records was offensive at that time. They was either dance records or novelty records. It's really when it came to 88 that you start hearing the destruction of people such as NWA and, you know, King T and, you know, just saying as an example, and start hearing all the lyrics and stuff like that. I got deep into going into the 90s. But from that, why don't you give that? Because one time you used to say Run DMC was louder than Obnoxious. I bet you appreciate Run DMC today. So, you know, radio got a lot to do with dissecting the audience. And, you know, the Rolling Stones is now on tour. There's a 12-year-old, through their parents, know about the Rolling Stones. How come a 12-year-old in the hip-hop field can acknowledge Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five? That's what I'm stating about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's a good thing that we have Red Alert out here giving us that perspective, and hopefully, I'm sure tonight he's got a lot in store for us as far as education and entertainment.
I just want to have fun.
Edutainment.
Just want to have fun.
That's it. All right.
But
Thanks
I thank
a lot.
you all for allowing me to be out here. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Red Alert.